What's good, Raider Nation? Welcome back to Vegas Nation. 1st and 10, your weekly, and actually this is going to be multi this week because we are talking NFL draft. We just finished up the first round. I'm Vinny Bonsignore, cover the Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. This is my colleague Adam Hill, also covers the Raiders and everything else for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. And we are fresh off the first round of the NFL draft. Before we get that, I just want to remind everybody that all Vegas Nation podcasts, including 1st and 10, are brought to you by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and station Casinos STN Sports. We appreciate all their support. It's been a long day. It's been a long process, Adam. I think every one of us were eager and happy to get the first round started. Now it's come and went, and I don't think to anybody's surprise whatsoever that Ashton Jeanty is now a Raider, probably the worst kept secret in the NFL. I think the Raiders tried to. It got to be such an open secret that I think they felt the need in some ways to maybe try to deke some people that think, no, we're really not on to Ashton Jeanty. We like the tackles. That was never really the case. They would have had Jeanty not been there, but as luck and fortune had it for the Raiders, Ashton Jeanty, the dynamic running back from Boise State, who fills a major need and is also, I think anyway, the best player available at number 6, is now a Raider. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, best player available. I'll start there. I think that's true. I don't think there was ever really that much question about best player. It's just, what does best player mean? What does value mean? Those sorts of things that are a big question, and something that will be much dissected, not only by us but around the country and around the league, and in the what running back value is, and all those sorts of things. And that is, I think, the big takeaway from what this is. Like, the Raiders made a very safe pick. They picked a guy who's going to be very good, who's going to be an unbelievable guy in the locker room. He's a great player, as you see on his film, breaks tackles all over the place. His highlight reel is unbelievable, and he's probably a better person than he is a player. So, all those things are very good and very safe. What does that mean in the end is the big question for the Raiders, and one that, they're going to have to answer, because I would, venture to guess at the end of 3-4 seasons, you're going to look back and say, he had 3 great seasons. What a good pick. What did it do to the record? That's the biggest question.
But, I mean, we can say that about every player the Raiders have taken over the last 20 some odd years. The real issue for the Raiders is they've never been able to build a full team.
Right.
Around whatever great assets they
don't do that by taking a running back.
They have. Well, I just think I think the way to do that is to stack as many good players as possible. That's been the Raiders' issue. They haven't been able to stack a talent and a roster filled with good football players. It's usually been bad football players. They've swung and missed. They've made terrible decisions. To me, you add as many good players as possible and take your chances that way. I think that usually puts you in a pretty good position to win. Whatever does happen from here on out in terms of the impact that Ashton Jeanty can have on a winning product or a losing product is not up to Ashton Jeanty. It's up to the Raiders to now continue to build a good team with him and around him, just like they have to do that with Brock Bowers. They have to do that with Geno Smith, just like they have to do that with Jacoby Myers and Max Crosby. These are good football players that I just named that need a supporting cast or just fellow good players. And I think, to me anyway, they're off to a good start, at least in this draft, of adding better players to this roster, Ashton Jeanty being the first one.
Sure. But it's not really so when people listen to this, and I know, look, if you're a football fan, you just want to watch guys play on Sunday, and you really want to watch running backs and receivers and quarterbacks.
You want to win football games.
That's what you want to do. But you do want to win. And here's the thing.
And you win football games with good football
When
players.
the Raiders run the clock at number 6, as they were tonight, and you look and you say, who is a better football player, Armand Membou or Ashton Jeanty? I don't think there's anybody on the planet that would say that it's not Ashton Jeanty. He's a better player.
Yeah.
That's a dumb question. That's not what you're trying to do in the draft. You're not trying to pick the best player. It's silly. In that case, teams would have like 9 quarterbacks on their roster. You don't do that.
Come on, now you're being
what you're
that's
doing,
unreasonable.
No, but I'm laying it out right. But I'm laying out.
And this is a case where a player was the best football player available at that pick, but also fills a massive need. The Raiders have been putrid when it comes to running the ball for 2 straight years. Right, and they had Josh Jacobs, and he was hurt a little bit that year before, but he was a good running back, but they couldn't run the ball really because the rest of the team wasn't in the right position. Here's what it is. You don't fix a running game by getting a running back. You fix a running game by scheme, by throwing the ball to set up the run. It's a combination of things. I disagree, and I think Pete Carroll will tell you that it's the reverse, and he's an old school football guy.
His last first-round pick was Rashad Penny in the first round for a running back. Didn't really fix anything with the running game. What I'm getting at is that's not the point. Like, you can look at guys that work, guys that didn't work. You can point out the fact that, hey, Saquon Barkley was great last year. So look, running backs are back.
Nobody's saying that.
Yeah, a lot of people. That's
well,
Twitter.
yeah, but it's not. Yeah,
but that makes no sense. He had to go to a really good team to elevate his game to where he could be a championship level. So what we're saying is those are all side facts. You can go down a rabbit hole for this. Could be a 18-hour podcast, and I would love to do that podcast, but you guys would stop listening. So
I think the key is.
I wanted to get to a point of why we talk about value in the draft, right? So if Ashton Jeanty, let's just say. I'm going to throw some things out just because you have to understand it a little better. If Ashton Jeanty is a 9.8 as a running back, and say Membu is 9.2, 9.1, something like that as a prospect, right? And I'm not even making the case for Membu. I'm just saying this is what people are talking about. But if he's like a 9.8, and you have Hampton who's like a 9.4, 9.3, somewhere in there. You've got Judkins, who's maybe like a 9.2, another 9.2 in Henderson, like a 9.1. You've got the fall off from the elite running back to the next tier of running backs is a decent little level. But there's other guys in that spot that are going to be just a little bit worse, a little bit worse, a little bit worse.
By the way, you wouldn't have Omari and Hampton if you take Membu at number 6.
No. But what I'm saying is, Here's where the top running back is. The next level of running backs are a certain tier down. From the offensive tackles, the top level guys, to the next tier, you're talking about a massive drop off to where, okay, you could get a elite running back or a good running back, or you can get a elite, close to elite tackle, or a average to below average tackle if you're going second, third, fourth round. That's what we're talking about economics, where what is the fall off from one guy to the next. So when you talk about like a starting quarterback in the league, goes back to betting, all this is economics. That's how things are built. That's how all this goes. And I know that's boring and people hate it, but that's what people are talking about when they're discussing a lot of these draft
I also
picks.
think that this is a sign, and I've been on this train for a little while. I think the Raiders actually like their offensive line. I like the potential of the offensive line.
It's decent. But also,
it's also. But I think they'll figure that out. Number one. Number two. That would be a bridge that they have to cross at some point. But if he is here, let's go on that premise. And saying that it's decent is a good point. But that's a starting point for an offensive line that has a second-year tackle in right tackle DJ Glaze, who, by the way, graded out as a top. Yeah. They've got, I think, an emerging star and it's funny to say star with the center, but Jackson Powers-Johnson I think is good. These are young players, so there's the potential for it to get better. When I say the Raiders like their offensive line, you say it's a good offensive line, that's a pretty decent starting point for an extremely young starting offensive line. So it has a chance to get better. So I get what you're saying with tackle.
And I just want to make one more point of what it goes back to when people talk about who's the most valuable, say, quarterback in the league, right? You can answer the question, but you'd probably be wrong. Because the most valuable quarterback isn't who the best quarterback is. It's whose team has a worse backup. Right? So if your starting if your answer to that was Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, whatever you want to say, and you would say, okay, what if his backup is Justin Herbert? He's not that valuable. Because if he misses the game, you're going down to a guy that's still pretty good. Now, if his backup is me, then now he is the most valuable.
It basically is over there right
so
now.
That's why that makes him the most valuable, right? So it's all economics. It's all value. That's what you're talking about in team building.
I get it. I get all that.
Of those things are very important to the conversation.
It is. And but I just feel like in this case, and in Ashton Jeanty's case, I think this is a special football player. A unique football player and a difference-making football player. And I think when you put him now on a team with a quarterback like Geno Smith, who I think the floor has risen pretty significantly from where the quarterback play was last year, and you've got another difference-maker, I believe, especially with a better quarterback and now a supporting run game in Brock Bowers, I think the pieces start to fit. For the bigger goal, to me, is building a good football team. It's not you want to look at it individually, this position, that position, that's great, and I get it. But to me, the best way to win football games is to put as many good football players on the field at any particular time at all positions. And I think that when you have a chance to add a unique difference-making player like Ashton Jeanty, I think it's something that you should absolutely consider. Now, if one of those tackles was Joe Alt or Penei Sewell, now I'm having a different conversation because I think those guys are those elite type, difference making type of players. I didn't necessarily see it with Banks. I don't necessarily see it with Armand Membu, the other tackle that I think the Raiders would have seriously considered either of those players if Jeanty wasn't there. But compared to Jeanty, or when looked at, got a chance to take 1, 2, or 3, I think they made the right choice in taking a guy that I think has a chance to make an immediate impact day one and
also,
help you win football games if you do right about There's
a lot more that has to happen for him to help you.
Sure,
win football
but games. I mean, that's usually the case when you have a 4-win team. But I think he puts them on a path towards that. Now it's on them to continue to hit in the draft and do good in free agency and trades and whatever it is, and coaching and developing, and all the younger players need to get better. Second-year players need to take a step forward. All those things.
And I'm not necessarily making the case even for Membu or Banks in that situation. What I'm saying is, ordinarily, I would say taking a running back in the top 10 is egregious and terrible and awful and inexcusable. However, this is a different situation because of who was there. If Mason Graham was on the board and they didn't take him, I would say this is egregious. I would. Yeah. I would say it is. It's egregious to allow this to make this happen.
And it's a moot point at this point.
Right, he wasn't. Yeah. He wasn't on the board anymore. Right. So then you have to look at, okay, what grades do we have on these guys? And just because you have Jeanty ahead of them doesn't mean he's the right pick. Like I said, it's about value and where the next guys fall and all those sorts of things. Who you can get
in this scenario. And that's what I am talking about. In this scenario.
Right. I mean, obviously,
the right choice.
To me, trading down would have been the right move if you could have potentially got 2 of those guys instead of 1 Ashton Jeanty.
But I'm
looking at that. And I still think the Bears probably might have been interested and may have done that. But who knows? We don't know if they did make the call, if they had those conversations, if the Raiders ran the pickup, which it doesn't sound like they did necessarily from hearing some things. Like, there was some thought, maybe. I don't know if it was about trading down.
I think they're waiting for somebody to call. I think the talk about them being in on one of the tackles, and who did the Chicago Bears took the tight end, so that's out.
They needed a skill position player. The Bears went into today needing a skill position guy. And I think that, Jeanty was certainly of interest to them. From what I understand, once the 5 and the 2 got flipped, and it was like, oh, wait, okay. That means that Jeanty's probably not going to go number 2 to the Jaguars, and we don't think the Browns are going to take him. No. That means Jeanty probably is going to fall, that they're going to be able to take him for the Raiders. But I think that there was potential of options that could happen. And I do think getting more good players would have been better. Trading down would have been better. But we don't know that they were able to do that, right? Exactly. So it's easy to sit here and say, look, number 1 option for the Raiders at 6 should have been to trade down. We don't know if that was offered.
Exactly. We don't know if that was a choice. That would have been ideal. Right. But again, it's a two-ended thing, so we don't know that there was there was another team offering what would have made sense for the Raiders to trade down and potentially miss out on a dynamic player, one way or another, whether it was Jeanty or somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, if you could have done it, then sure. But we don't know. And I just want for people to be clear of what do you mean taking the best player isn't always the best thing. Like, I know that's confusing and probably frustrating, especially when it's a running back, and especially when you're going to see him next year. I think put up good numbers. But putting up good numbers doesn't always translate to wins. And you can see it. I'll point out this game for people. I know Dan Orlovsky today on ESPN was talking Jeanty down based on the Penn State game. And he said that's what happens when you don't have a good enough offensive line, you put a running back out there that's elite, and you get crushed against a better team. And he said, in the NFL, if you don't have a good enough offensive line, that's what's going to happen. Where he's wrong is Ashton Jeanty was phenomenal in that game. Like, he was breaking tackles left and right. He was getting hit in the backfield almost every play. I believe he ended up with it was like 1 or 2 long carries that padded his numbers up to like 33 carries for 104 yards. On paper, that looks pretty bad. Not very good, especially for an offense that ran the ball like them. But I'd tell you to go watch that game and say Ashton Jeanty was phenomenal in that game. But that is what happens when you don't have the offensive line to compete. You do have better tacklers on the other side of the ball. Yards are much more difficult to come by, and he's not going to be getting 33 carries a game in the NFL. It's just not going to happen.
And you could have a great tackle, and if your guard and center are bad, it's not going to matter. Sure. Or if your quarterback's not good. You could have a great cornerback, but if you don't have a great pass rush, his job's going to be more difficult. You can have a great pass rush. That's the thing. Like this isn't an individual sport. It's a team game, and that's why My bigger point is it's on the Raiders to maximize the good players that they have by continuing to add good football players. And when you get a chance to do that, you have to do that. And especially in this case, I think he's a unique player. I'm with you, actually. I don't normally think about drafting a running back in the top 10 or let alone number 6. But when there is a player of this level, and I think I've been around football a long time, I see some similarities to some great players, and relative to what was also there at number 6, and just sizing this draft up, I think it was a good choice for the Raiders at this particular time. That might not be the case next year. Like if Ashton Jeanty and Arch Manning's there, or something along those lines. Like I could totally see a case where it wouldn't be the best choice for them. But I think in this particular year, it was.
Running back is a luxury that the Raiders really can't afford right now. I think that's the case.
Always add the best players that you can.
So
at every turn.
You said the key is to win games. I would agree with that. I think that's in the end the key. Mm-hmm. To even dive, again, like I said, we could do this for hours and hours, and I would love to. Look at win shares by position, what guys are worth. Quarterbacks can be worth like 5, 6, 7 points,
of course,
in a game. There's elite left tackles and some right tackles that are worth a point to a half point per game. Some wide receivers are a point, even a point and a half for some wide receivers. There's corners that are worth a half point to a point. I think there's 2 or 3 running backs in the league that are worth maybe a half point. Like running backs just aren't. They don't contribute necessarily to winning games,
especially on bad teams.
Right,
but you put them on good teams, and that's the point of this.
But you have to have the good team first.
But sometimes it's just a build-up too. You just have to stack as many good players as possible and hope within
good positions.
That window. What's that?
At the right positions.
Well, yeah. But you also don't force it if that's not there.
It's true. Look. Again, we're going back to it's unique. I think we're trying to do a bigger overall picture of what people are talking about when they mean value. In this case, there wasn't necessarily these great options. If the Raiders didn't believe in either offensive tackle, okay. And if they didn't believe in potentially Ted McMillan, which there was various opinions all over the board, I still think he might have gone at 5 if the Jaguars didn't trade. I think they might have picked him over Jeanty. And he goes down to 8. Like I do think that there's very, very wide opinions on him, and that is a premium position that can change the complexion of an offense.
True.
But if they didn't believe in him, okay. Like again, I think trade down. If you stay at the pick, don't love going running back, but if there are running backs that are warranted to potentially do it, he could be in that mix. Now I would venture to guess that he's similar to Brock Bowers last year, and that he has a lot of production that doesn't translate to any success on the field. But we'll see.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here real quick. But before we do, we're going to go to our own Heidi Fang and Chuck Esposito from Station Casinos STN Sports. They are going to talk about their own draft thoughts. Take it away, Chuck and Heidi.
Joining us now on the First and 10 podcast, a special draft edition, we have the race and sportsbook director from Station Casinos, Chuck Esposito, in for the weekly segment. Chuck, it's here. I know you're a draftnik. Draft time is here and upon us. How are you feeling about everything that you've seen happening leading up to Thursday?
I'm doing great, Heidi. I think there's just so much, smoke screens out there and so many storylines. It's kind of crazy. We were just going through the draft props before you and I jumped on this segment and, looking at teams and kind of reading between the lines and seeing what they're doing and making some adjustments. It's fun. There's no question. There's one polarizing running back that seems to be captivating everybody right now. And what we thought could slip till 10 or beyond might not go back beyond 5. So a lot of fun for us, but information era, as you and I have talked about, and the guests are right on it. That's for sure.
2010 was the last time a UNLV player was drafted in the NFL draft. Ricky White, Jackson Woodard, they're both been making the rounds. They were at the combine. Do you think this is the year that we see one of them not go, undrafted, that one of them is drafted to a team in the later rounds, looking at maybe Saturday, perhaps even the Raiders? Do you think because they've had a chance to look at these guys that played in Allegiant Stadium that they have maybe an eye on somebody like a Ricky White because he is a pretty interesting receiver that could do some things even on special teams that we've seen, you know?
Right. I'm not sure that necessarily the Raiders draft either one, but I think they both get drafted. I'd be really surprised if they aren't. Both have a special talent set. Loved, Woodard and his kind of, sideline to sideline. He reminded me a lot of the way Brian Urlacher played. Urlacher came out of a small school as well. So I could see that. I think they both get drafted. I like both their skill sets. And I'm going to say right now that both guys get drafted this year. And I hope they do. And good luck to both of them as well.
There you have it. And that is interesting to me. I know everyone's going, oh, she's not talking Raiders. Well, that's because I think it's all relative, so to speak, in the terms of, well, what do they do? And how does that make the rest of it shake out?
The Raiders, I think they could use a wide receiver. Love Bowers from and I think it opens up the door for Loveland and Warren this year. But I think they need more receivers too. So they could use help on the O-line there. So I think you're going to have a lot of trades this year with teams moving up and down the draft board.
Great stuff, Chuck. Thank you so much again for the time. I certainly appreciate having you on here every week with the Vegas Nation podcast. And if you are interested in any of those props that we discussed, you can head on down to any of the station locations that are in town, as well as checking it out on the STN Sports app. For Chuck Esposito, I'm Heidi Fang. We'll check in with you again next week.
All right, we go into the second round now. Shedeur Sanders is still there. Jalen Milroe is still there. The Raiders had the 5th pick overall in the second round, pick number 37 overall. If you're thinking quarterback, I'm not necessarily thinking that, but I mean, it's a consideration, especially how connected the Raiders have been to Shedeur Sanders. You look at the Cleveland Browns, who had the 1st pick in the second round, pick number 33. I've been talking to some people in the NFL tonight, and they're like, dubious that they're going to take a quarterback. The Giants just got Jackson Dart. The Tennessee Titans just got Cam Ward, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. These are the 4 teams that dropped ahead of the Raiders. Obviously, have Trevor Lawrence. Could we be, assuming nobody trades up, ahead of the Raiders? I think there's a very strong likelihood that Shedeur Sanders is going to be there at number 37. And I don't necessarily think it would be a good decision for them to draft him right there.
No, I don't necessarily think so either.
Depending on who goes.
Pretty much every team in the league and every quarterback-needy team in the league has already had their chance to, and they passed. And there's a reason that happened. And again, we aren't in all the interviews. That's why a lot of analysis stuff we do is based on tape and analytics, and then what some scouts say, and then of course you have what the team say and what they want to leak out. But we're not in those meetings. We don't know. We've heard from enough people that a lot of those meetings went very, very badly. But there's also some bad tape on Shedeur. We talked about that from the beginning. Like there is some troubling tape from Shedeur's time in college, and you can blame it on offensive line, which I think a lot of it was. But he also played his way into a lot of sacks, and I think that there were some problems that showed up consistently for him in college. So I don't think it'd be the worst. Again, you got to take a shot at a quarterback at some point.
Yeah.
He does have enough good things that I think it would be like, okay, maybe something works here. I don't know if it's the most conducive thing to have what we already see. Like, we've already seen what it looks like tonight. He was the story, wasn't even drafted. That's what it's going to be like on a weekly basis if he's here as a backup quarterback.
But
I don't know if you want that.
Yeah,
if you're trying to build up your team.
True, but
if you think he can be good,
yeah, right.
You got to take a shot on a quarterback at some point in this draft. There's worse options than taking him there. But I do think you obviously need corner. There's some other spots that you need. And I also do think, look, I'm going to say I think taking a running back in the first round makes it a little tougher to take flyers on guys later. Like you got to fill in some spots on the roster the rest of the draft here, because you did take that, again, luxury pick in the first round. You've got holes now you have to fill.
Absolutely. Our thanks again to Heidi Fang and Chuck Esposito for their great spot. I'm Vinny Bonsignore. We will be back tomorrow after rounds 2 and 3. By the way, the Raiders have pick number 68 overall in the third round. And John Spytek, their general manager, actually hinted that maybe
which was funny.
Down.
It was funny. He hinted about trading down after the other day saying he wasn't really that interested in trading down because they already had 9 picks.
Oh, no, he wants to trade down. They want to trade down.
I think he wants to trade down.
Especially with some of the guys that are on the board. And maybe that gives you a little bit more comfort level to invest a draft pick in a quarterback that's not going to pay off for you right now, a little bit more down the road. If you get a couple more extra picks to add some players in what I think is a very deep draft class, not for stars necessarily, but good, solid players. Until we speak again tomorrow, enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy early Friday. The draft kicks off at 4 p.m. tomorrow Pacific time. We will be here after the third round to wrap it all up. Thank you very much.